Welcome to another World Cup fantasy video, the final team selection for this fantasy format. Then we've got a deadline stream before the third place playoff, and of course that will still count towards match day 7. Be sure to check out my best wildcard team video where I explain everything as well. But here I'm going to talk about the 6 transfers I'm looking to make. We do get 6 free transfers for the final and the third place playoff, and I'm looking to bolster my squad and get to 15 men, because actually I was down to 10 in the last week and I didn't take a hit to get to 11. So I'll be describing and explaining how I did in match day 6 and then talking about my plans for the final match day. So be sure to drop this video a like if you end up enjoying it, and let's try to get to 20,000 subscribers. We're getting ever closer to that milestone. That is the goal before the end of the Premier League season. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. I haven't got many goalkeeper returns throughout this tournament, but Hugo Lloris kept the clean sheet and made one terrific save to deny a stunning overhead kick. And Morocco had plenty of chances, or you could say they were into some really good positions, but they didn't really take any shots or create enough opportunities. I think there was more danger there for them to cause to France, but they didn't. And Lloris kept the clean sheet, which was my expectation. And that's why I loaded up a little bit on France anyway, with Lloris in goal. And you also had the choices of Livakovic, Martinez and Bono. In the end, it was Argentina and France keeping the clean sheets and reaching the final. And in terms of the third place playoff, though, you would want to, at this stage, get one goalkeeper from that game, so a Moroccan or Croatian goalkeeper, and then get someone from the final rather than having Lloris and Martinez. But Lloris was in here, he got a 6-pointer, and that's pretty decent. It was the week of the defenders and the goalkeeper. Molina kept the clean sheet, a 3-0 victory for Argentina over Croatia, and Molina played a pivotal role in the second goal, the one that Alvarez scored. He drew some Croatian defenders away with a darting run, and that gave Alvarez the little bit of space he needed to execute that goal. And there was a bit of luck involved, but the grit, the determination from the Argentina players was admirable, and that's what really led to that goal, and Croatia couldn't deal with it. And there is the possibility of Montiel potentially coming in for the final, which he did in the Copa America final last year, and he dealt with Neymar very well. So there is that possibility that Molina won't start in that game, but to be honest, he's had a great tournament, and if he does start, I'm wishing the very best for him as well. He's been very impressive in the 6 games so far. And then moving on to the other Argentina defender, we've got Nicolas Otamendi in here, and he got a yellow card, which is not really too surprising, you could say, but a 5-pointer, that's still a clean sheet for Argentina, and Otamendi was an integral part of that once again, and he has been a very underrated figure over the last few years. And once again, let's see how he performs in the final. And I think if he continues what he's been doing over the last year in particular, then I think that Argentina have a good chance, I think, of at least having a good shape and being compact, and Otamendi is very important to that. And then the final defender, and probably the standout really, is Theo Hernandez with that all-important goal for France in the first 5 minutes. He got 13 points in the end with a clean sheet also added on top of that. So Theo Hernandez, I always said this, he's the best attacking fullback for France, and that's why he's the best fantasy asset in that regard. And to be honest with France, I think these two, Lloris and Hernandez, is the best way to cover them defensively. But then you've also got the likes of Koundé, Varane, whether it's Upamecano who starts in the final or Konate remains to be seen. You would think it will be Konate after his performance in the semi-final, but Theo Hernandez, I think, is just, you can't really discuss him. And despite his deficiencies defensively, I think going forward he offers France so much, and he could be a really big danger to any team in the world. So I was down to 10 men, and I had Saka in the starting 11. He obviously didn't play. England were knocked out in the quarterfinals, so we're not going to talk too much about him. But I did have Ziyech, and I didn't make a transfer in. I already had him from beforehand. He only got a 1-point, and I have to say he was very disappointing in this game. And it looked like Morocco tried to target France's left-hand side, and I think they could have done a little bit more, to be honest. With Ziyech and Hakimi on that right flank for Morocco, I think they could have exposed Hernandez's really advanced positioning and Mbappe's lack of tracking just that little bit more. And once France made that really good change, bringing Thuram in, put him on the left-hand side, and then shifting Mbappe down the middle, I think that's where France started to regain a little bit of control, and that's how the second goal came about. But I think Ziyech was very underwhelming in that game, and he was probably one of the worst players in the match, unfortunately, but he's had a great tournament overall, and Morocco have as well. The other midfielders are Modric, who got a key passes point and also the appearance point, and I think he's been growing into this tournament. His best performance undoubtedly is against Brazil, where honestly it reminded me of Zidane against Brazil in 2006. But Modric has still been a quality player. He'll probably have one last game in the World Cup in the third place playoff. I wish him all the best, of course. Very humble, respectful player, and obviously one of the best of his generation. And he has been fantastic for Croatia over these years. For Croatia to reach a World Cup final and a semi-final, potentially finishing third, is a massive achievement with a population of around 4 million. The other Croatian that I have in my team is, of course, Ivan Perisic, who got a 1-pointer, and he's been a bit underwhelming, you could could say. Obviously scored that crucial goal against Japan, but very lackluster against Brazil and Argentina. But I think Croatia just lacked that little bit extra in the final third, and I think that's what really kind of cost them, and maybe it was a step too far for them at this stage. But honestly, Croatia, they were causing some big problems in the first half an hour, 35 minutes, and in terms of possession and their midfield, they are undoubtedly the best team that are, well, I say remaining in this tournament, that still have a game yet to be played in the third place playoff. I'd say Croatia's midfield is even better than Argentina's and also France, especially if you look at all of them individually. But that's the midfield. Now let's move on to the forwards. Once again, it's the same guy for the last 15 years. Lionel Messi has a chance to really seal that World Cup and footballing immortality. He got a double-digit return for the first time in this World Cup. He was close to getting it against the Netherlands, but he obviously got booked in that game as well. But at 10 points, I mean, what more can you ask for? And look, you can't really say anything about Gavardio. He defended well. He did the best he could. He did everything that you would teach a defender to do in the case when you're facing someone like Messi. You know, try to shift him onto his weaker foot, try to drag him away from the goal. I mean, honestly, what can you do in those situations? That play by Messi was probably even better, you could argue, than the pass he gave to Molina against Netherlands. I mean, which assist was better? The one against Croatia or the one against Netherlands? That's obviously a big question. And the penalty, I think, was very crucial in that game. And that was one of the best penalties I've seen Messi take, by the way, right in the top corner. And it looks like he's adapting to the goalkeeper. So with Noppert, he was doing a stuttering run-up. And with Livakovic, he knew that Livakovic would wait until the last moment. So he just absolutely rifled it into the top corner. So a great tournament by Messi. And just one more game. Let's see what he can do. I'm hoping for the best there as well. But he's been incredible. And for me, he's been the best player in this tournament and in the world once again. The other two forwards are Olivier Giroud, who really should have scored, to be honest. He hit the post and he also came close a few other times, but just wasn't his day there in the semi-final. But he's going to be a huge threat against Argentina in the final. I think France will be looking to get the ball to their wingers, Dembele and Mbappe, and provide that service to Giroud. And let's not even forget Griezmann, who for me is the most important player there for France. But Olivier Giroud is the man for the big occasion, and I think he's going to be a really big threat for Matchday 7. And then the other player is Kylian Mbappe, who didn't get the official assists, but in terms of fantasy assists, both of the goals really came from Mbappe, so they count as his assists here, and he got a 7-pointer as a result. But he hasn't scored in the last 2 games, and that's maybe a bit worrying going into the final. You wouldn't expect him to blank 3 times in a row, but Mbappe's always a threat, and even if you defend really well against him, he can still be involved in the goals that France score. But that was my Matchday 6 performance, much better actually compared to Matchday 5, I believe, and also one of the best match days I've had, because I only had 10 men and you actually got a small green arrow. I'm going to show you right now how I did in terms of my ranks and points before moving on to the Matchday 7 team selection. My captain was once again Lionel Messi, who is now at 80% ownership, and that's only going to rise before the Matchday 7 deadline. So I'm not sure in terms of what the record is overall in World Cup fantasy in terms of ownership, but I'm pretty sure Messi should be first, if not second, in that kind of stat. And I'd be very surprised actually if he wasn't top, and that isn't kind of an all-time record. But he's having a great tournament. The dribbles, the chances he's creating, the goals he's scoring, taking away the penalties. I mean, he's doing all of this at the age of 35, and just one more step there for Messi and Argentina. But honestly, it's going to be a really difficult game there, and it should be an exciting one for sure. But Lionel Messi, I mean, he's just been my captain every single match day at this stage, apart from the Poland game actually in match day 3, and that's the only time he's blanked. So look, we're going to talk about the power captain actually, because I haven't used it yet, so I am obviously going to be using it in match day 7. But in terms of how I did in match day 6, 62 points, 450 overall, and my overall rank went by about 3,000 places, so from 30,000 to 27,840. So really good stuff. You can also see the league code, which you can join if you click the link in the description below. But now let's just talk about Matchday 7, how I'm going to be lining up, and my proposed 5 or 6 free transfers. I'm still kind of in 2 minds about whether I'm going to use all of them, but once again, as always, I'm going to be confirming them once I see the lineups, and one of them will include obviously the deadline stream. We're going to be reacting to the Morocco versus Croatia lineups, and then we can start to maybe take some punts, because you would expect rotation in that game. And then of course the rest of the transfers will be directed in the Argentina versus France final, which will be done on the Sunday, and I'll try to keep you posted on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. I keep on saying this, but really, you can go for absolutely any one of these 4 goalkeepers, and I think it's completely fine. The only thing I would say is go for 1 goalkeeper from the third place playoff and 1 from the final, just so you can make substitutions between the Saturday and the Sunday, and you can maximize your points or your chances of getting points, really. That's the only thing you need to think about, and it just really depends what you think is going to happen. So in the Croatia-Morocco game, if you slightly favour Croatia, maybe go for Livakovic, and if it's the other way around, then you can just go for Bono. I'm going to look at the lineups first before drawing conclusions and finalising my team. So Livakovic could easily become Bono, and I think there's a few injury problems for Croatia, including Brozovic and Juranovic, so we'll keep an eye on that situation. And Croatia could rotate a little bit more, and I think Morocco might have more motivation to finish third because they've never done it before. No African team has ever reached the semi-finals. When you look at Croatia, they've already finished third in a World Cup, and they also finished runners-up, so maybe the motivation won't be the same. But honestly, in a third-place playoff, it's so unpredictable, and I think if there was rotation, there would be more on the side of Croatia compared to Morocco. So I'm going to look at the lineups in the deadline stream for Morocco versus Croatia, then I'll be finalising my team, and this could easily become Bono. But at the moment, I'm favouring Livakovic, and that's mainly because he's made so many saves, the most of any goalkeeper in this tournament. So even if he does concede, he can still get a few extra points from those saves. As I said earlier in this video, there is a possibility of Montiel coming in for Molina. That's what happened in the Copa America final last year, and Montiel was an underrated hero actually, and he did a really good job in dealing with Neymar, who was really good in that game. Molina is the better option offensively, but Montiel offers you just a little bit more in terms of 1v1 duel. So it'll be interesting to see how Scaloni sets up Argentina for the final, and if Molina doesn't start, who would be the next best attacking threat from Argentina's defence? It would be Marcos Acuna, who's also served the suspension in the semi-final. The same goes for Montiel. So Argentina have everyone available here. And at the moment, I am leaning towards Molina. I've already got him in my team. But if we find out he's not starting, then I will be transferring him out, potentially for Acuna. But it all depends on the starting lineup. Then next up, we have yet another Argentina defender. Of course, you saw him in the points section, and that's Nicolas Otamendi. And a double up in Argentina defence, I mean, maybe you're not going to like that too much. It just depends on what you think is going to happen in the final. But I still think kind of doubling up on every single nation, if possible, is the way to go. And if you are convinced about one nation keeping a clean sheet, just stack up on that defence. Go for 3 or 4. You have nothing to lose. And it could also be a huge rank gainer for you. So maybe even if you think Croatia will keep a clean sheet, go for Livakovic, Juranovic if he's fit. And also a few others like Bruno Sosa and Gavardiol. You could do something like that. But at the moment, I'm looking for a balance more so than not. And I'm not that convinced about any single one of these 4 countries keeping a clean sheet. It could be every single nation scoring, and obviously that's what the neutrals would want. But Otamendi's in here right now, and the only concern I would have is about yellows or reds. Then Juranovic is in here, but like I said, this could easily become Bruno Sosa or Gavardiol. So I'm going to keep an eye on the lineup and see if Juranovic is fit. If he is my favourite Croatia defender. Really good on DI. He's had a fantastic tournament. He was the man of the match for me in terms of the outfield players anyway against Brazil, alongside Luka Modric. Of course, Livakovic was the hero on that day. And the final defender, and this won't be too much of a surprise, will be Hakimi against Croatia. And I want to cover Morocco defensively, of course. You know, they've only conceded, 3 goals in this whole tournament. So they've had the best defence in terms of goals conceded. They have maybe been a bit fortunate not to concede more, but their spirit, their defending has been absolutely exceptional. I'm just a bit concerned about all these injuries, and it obviously cost them in the semi-final. A Gerd pulling out just before the game started. Then you have Mazraoui and Saiss coming off really early on in the game. They clearly weren't fit enough, and I think if Morocco just went for the fully fit defenders and they also dealt with those nerves at the beginning of the game, it could be a completely different story. They could be in a World Cup final right now. But that is my defence, and let's now move on to the midfielders. He was the hero in the Maracanã last year in the Copa America final. Angel Di Maria is a man of big moments. He's scored in multiple finals for Argentina, the Finalissima, the Copa America, even Olympic gold final. He'll be looking to add the World Cup to that list. Now, there is the possibility he's going to start. He has been training with the Argentina squad, and that's something that hasn't really happened in the last few weeks. He's been training separately in that occasion, but now he's training with the full group, and it looks like he's good physically, so he could start this game. It's just a question of tactics and whether Scaloni wants to go for a 4-3-3, and if he does, Di Maria will almost certainly start, to be honest. But Argentina can also play a back 3 with Lisandro Martinez, or they could play a 4-4-2 like they did against Croatia to control the midfield and add Paredes in there alongside McAllister, Enzo Fernandes and Rodrigo de Paul. But Di Maria, for me, is that exciting maverick player. This will be his last official game for Argentina. And like I said, a man of big moments. He can produce that moment of magic, whether it's a goal or an assist. And he offers so much there. And he can also draw some defenders away, just like Lionel Messi can. And that can open up even more spaces for the likes of Alvarez and some of the midfielders. So Di Maria could be really crucial. If he doesn't start, I would expect him to come off the bench, especially depending on the situation going on in the game. But he could be really effective coming off the bench around 60 minutes against tired legs, and he could cause, some problems there and make that difference. So Angel Di Maria, for me, is the most exciting midfielder on paper from those we have available. We also can't forget the amazing goal he scored against France the last time these two teams met. But Di Maria, honestly, he can score against absolutely anybody, and it'll be a fantastic way to end his international career. Next up is Ziyech against Croatia, and I'm not really expecting too much here from the offensive players, but to be honest, I'm just going to go for what I have. I'm not going to get rid of Ziyech at this point, and he is my favourite Moroccan midfielder and attacker, despite the fact that Boufal on the eye has probably been the best kind of winger and midfielder for Morocco in this tournament. But Ziyech has gotten that goal and assist already, and it would be great if he could add to that in the third place playoff as well. But either way, I've got all bases covered with Croatia and Moroccan defenders, and the same goes for the midfielders. Speaking of which, I've gone for Luka Modric, who hasn't been great from a fantasy perspective. He's got 0 goals and 0 assists. He's on penalties though, and that's always going to be a massive plus. You would expect him to start. It's going to be his last World Cup game, unless something absolutely ridiculous happens, because he's still performing to this level at the age of 37. So obviously he deserves a lot of credit. Another Croatia legend is Ivan Perisic, who is their all-time record goal scorer in international tournaments, whether it's the Euros or the World Cup. He always appears with these big goals, and if it wasn't for that stunning header against Japan, Croatia might not have even reached this stage. So you obviously have to give him credit. He hasn't been that great in the other games, but honestly, these Croatia players are legends in their country, and they've done so much for football. But that is the midfield. I'll be honest, it's not going to be the best looking midfield you ever see, but from those we have available, I would argue these are the kind of best 4. Then you can maybe add 1 or 2 more to that list, like Enzo Fernandez, McAllister, Tchouaméni, and a few others like that. But honestly, I'm quite happy with this midfield with all things considered. This is where things spice up a lot. So I've always said this. For me, you have to go for Messi and Mbappe in terms of the Matchday 7 teams available. Yes, you've got En-Nesyri, Petkovic, and a few others like Kramaric. But honestly, I would just limit this to a pool of 3 or 4 players. So I think Messi is undoubtedly the best one alongside Mbappe. But what I might do is actually get rid of Olivier Giroud and go for Alvarez, who got a 14-pointer against Croatia. Now, that just really depends on what you think is going to happen in the World Cup final. And it's so difficult to call. And I think Alvarez and Giroud both have great chance of scoring. I hope it's Alvarez and Giroud blanks. That is obviously what I wish for, even if I do keep Giroud in the end. But at the moment, I am just having that feeling about Alvarez, but honestly, it could go either way, and I think it's a really close call because Giroud is the all-time record goal scorer for France, and he is the one for the big moments for them. So it's going to be really interesting to call, and for me, no matter what you think, I'd definitely go for Messi and Mbappe. Then it's just between Alvarez and Olivier Giroud for your final forward. So let's now take a look at the bench, which is just full of France players. We've got Lloris in there in goal, if needed, if my Livakovic or Bono punt in terms of the goalkeeper doesn't work. Then you've got Theo Hernandez, Tchouaméni and Mbappe all ready to come on as well. So that's a strong bench, of course. Remember, what you want to do is make sure you don't bench any of the Saturday players, so the Croatian or Moroccan players. Otherwise, you miss out on their points entirely. You want to give yourself as many possibilities of scoring points as you can. And in terms of the captaincy, I'm playing the power captain, but I would go for Perisic first. I think if I had to go for one attacker from that game, I think it would be him. He's got the record historically, and I think he's the most likely to score, to be honest, from any of the players in terms of a fantasy perspective. But honestly, it's really close to call, and maybe a defender or a goalkeeper, as I've said in previous videos, is the way to go in terms of the captaincy there. And my other captain would be, I think this is no surprise here, it would be Lionel Messi, but maybe you could just go for Mbappe or someone else, someone like Alvarez, Giroud, maybe Di Maria could be the one that really steps up to the plate and delivers that World Cup trophy. But in terms of captaincy, I would have gone for Perisic first, then Lionel Messi if needed. But I've got the power captain active, so I don't have to worry about the captaincy at all in this week. And remember, because some people are a bit confused about this, they ask about who should I put the power captain on. It's not about that. It's about when you use the power captain, and then the game automatically changes your captain to your highest scoring player in your starting 11. That's how it works. We described this and explained it in the How to Play World Cup Fantasy video, as well as many other streams and videos when we covered this fantasy format. So that's all done. I'm going to play the power captain and let's see how it goes. And I'm hoping it'll be on Messi in the end. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes. Let's also push on towards 20,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM. And you can also become a patron or a channel member. The link's on the description below. The same goes for the World Cup Fantasy League and the Discord server. So all of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for this World Cup. Match day 7. I hope you enjoy the rest of the games. And I'll see you next time.